All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. Again, I will probably have more individuals coming into the waiting room as I start. So I will be clicking away, letting them in as we begin. As with all of my trainings, I am recording the screen and my voice, and either later tonight or tomorrow, you will receive in your email a link to a YouTube video of the recording of this session. So you can use that, pause anytime you want, open up Drive and open up a Google Sheet and practice everything that we covered this afternoon. And again, also, as with all of the trainings that we're doing virtually, you'll find that we're going to move through everything pretty quickly. So don't worry about trying to keep up um, or trying to open up a Google Sheet and following along, because you can always do that later with the video, and you can do it at your own pace. So those of you that are fairly new to Google and Google Docs, I'd recommend just sitting back, listening. My main goal in the next hour and a half is to give you sight memory of what Google Sheets can do. So if you've seen it done, then you know that you can do it. And you can either use the training video that you'll receive, or you can always search YouTube. There are lots of teachers out there who are more than happy to tell you how smart they are when it comes to Google Sheets, and they'll have videos on everything about it, as well as more intermediate videos that will show you how to do a special formula or tips and tricks. So no worries on trying to keep up. So again, we will be, I am recording this video, and I will be sending you a YouTube link either tonight or tomorrow. So that said, I'm going to go ahead and remove this, and we're going to go ahead and get started. If you have any questions, there is a chat window available to you if you have never opened up a chat window in Zoom before. In the same bar where you can turn on and off your mic or your video, you should see chat. If it's not visible there, there's probably a 3-dot menu you can click on, and you'll see chat there. You can open up the chat window. You can feel free to ask questions during the training through the chat window. And we will have up to a half hour available after the training session for you to ask questions as well, if you have anything follow-up that you'd like to ask. All right, again, those of you that just arrived into the meeting, if you open up the chat window in Zoom and scroll up to the top of the chat window at the very beginning, you will find a link to this presentation, as well as a link to the practice sheet that I will be using to talk about the concepts in Google Sheets. You can also feel free to pull out a pen or a pencil and write down the short link that you see right here. That will get you to this. If you've got Google open right now, you can go to, after you visit this link and go there, you can go to File and make a copy, and that will make a personal copy for you of this presentation, and you can change it up as you please. Those of you that are educators, you can make a copy of your own copy and then take that and adapt it for your students, change the language, maybe the images, maybe stretch it out a little bit further so that you can use a slide per concept. Or just use it over a couple of days with your students. After you've done that and adapted it for your students, you can always feel free to share it via Google Classroom with your students and help them get a better understanding of Google Sheets. All right. So moving on to slide 2 here, why Sheets and how does it compare to Excel? Google Sheets, just like Excel, is a spreadsheeting program. It is used for crunching data or storing data. Sheets is designed to mimic Excel, as with all of their Office-related products. Google Docs mimicking Word, and Slides mimicking PowerPoint, but on a fairly basic level. You're going to find that the interface or the work area looks more like Windows 97 or Windows 2000. It's a very simplified interface. You're not going to find the ribbon bar that you see in Excel, but that said, you're going to find pretty much almost all of the features that a basic to intermediate Excel user would use. So as a reminder, this is an introduction to Google Sheets, so we will be covering Sheets on a basic level. So those of you that are just somewhat vaguely familiar with Excel, maybe it's the place that everybody else plays with, or maybe everybody else creates those sheets and they give it to you to use, maybe to put in student data or something. You're going to be just fine here because we are going to cover this from a basic level moving forward. I will touch upon some intermediate concepts for you, but the main goal here is to show you how it is like Excel and how you can crunch your data, but also to highlight the collaborative features that are available in Sheets, just like every other feature or every other tool that Google has. So it's completely online, just like all of Google's tools. You can access it from any computer as long as you remember your Drive login. You can go in and you can edit a sheet, jump on a flight to Wyoming, meet up with relatives, borrow their computer, log in again, and continue working in the Sheets if you want to. Although if you're in Wyoming, I recommend you enjoy the wildlife and the outdoors rather than sitting there crunching data on a Google Sheet. You're going to find again that this is simple to use, that it allows for collaboration with others, which is why Google was pretty much eating Microsoft's lunch for many years because of that collaboration tool. It's really designed for office as well as education, allows students and teachers to share a file. In Excel, if you in the past had to have somebody add data to an Excel sheet, usually what would happen is you would attach that Excel spreadsheet to an email and send it off, which means you've got that Excel spreadsheet on your computer, and then you have a copy of it sitting in your outgoing email, and you have copies that are showing up in the incoming emails of those that receive it. Then, of course, they download it, so now there's another copy. They make their changes or additions, they email it back to you, and then you have to download those attachments back. So just getting one change from 2 or 3 other teachers in an Excel spreadsheet could cause you to have as many as 17 or 18 copies in the wild, which is why quite often you see in Microsoft documents in the past revision dates and so forth and naming conventions so people can figure out what the most recent version is, but there's usually some back and forth about which version do I use, the January 15th or the January 18th version. With Google Sheets, like anything else in Google, you get to create a document and share that document live with others. And so no matter how many people you have working in a Google spreadsheet, it's still just one spreadsheet. And so there aren't all these copies, there aren't all these which revision date and so forth. One of the great things about Google products is that it's updated automatically. You don't have to run updates like you do with Microsoft Office. Whenever they add features, they just show up. One of the worst things about Google products are that they automatically update and add features. So it's a dual-edged sword. Every now and then you'll go in and take a look at docs or sheets or slides, and you'll see a new feature, a new menu item, or something gets changed around, and you didn't ask for it. You didn't update, it's just there. Now, 99% of the time, these are great features, and it usually doesn't cause too much of a change in the interface. Every now and then, though, something changes and you have to kind of relearn. And I'll show you in Sheets, when I share a sheet today, how the sharing interface has now begun to change. And so it's a little simpler, and yet it requires some relearning. You can import Excel data. So if you've got existing spreadsheets and you are just hungering to figure out if you can use that same Excel spreadsheet with all of its formulas in Sheets, the answer is yes. You can import it in and just begin using it as an Excel file. What's kind of cool nowadays too is you can actually import or bring into Drive an Excel spreadsheet, and you can double click on it in Drive and it will open in Sheets, but it will still be a native Excel formatted file. So you're editing it even though it's an Excel file, and you're editing it with the Google Sheets interface. But at any time, you can convert it over to a straight native Google Sheet format. Another cool thing about Sheets is that it integrates with docs and slides. So you can embed charts and data into docs and slides. You embed a chart from a sheet with its data, then anytime you go back to that original sheet with the originating source data, if you change that data, your doc and your slide, if you've embedded a chart, will have an update button on it. And if you click it, it will automatically update with the new data on that separate sheet. If somebody who you work with ultimately needs, after all the collaborative work you do, if they need it to be ultimately in an Excel format, you can export your Google Sheet to Excel. You can also export it to PDF, a couple of other formats too. But once it's exported and it gets downloaded, you can send it to them and they can continue the work straight in Excel. Of course, that won't update your Google Sheet because it's a downloaded file, but just know that you can begin your data processing work in a Google Sheet, even if it ultimately is going to end up being housed as an Excel spreadsheet somewhere else one day. You can work with third-party add-ons. These are additional tools that other vendors have created. Most of the time, you're going to discover that these are all free. And you're also going to see some that were created by individuals who may have created a program that you downloaded and used on your computer, or a website that you've used for other work related to data. They have created these integrated add-ons that will add those features right into Google Sheets if you want them. And there's some pretty cool ones in there, and I'll point those out. So it doesn't matter what kind of device you have. You can have a Chromebook, a Mac, a PC. You could use a cell phone or a tablet, Android or Apple. It doesn't matter what flavor device. If you have the app installed on mobile devices, or you have internet access in a browser, you can access Sheets and make work across all these devices. You can sit there with a cell phone while you're waiting in line shopping and update information in an Excel or a Google Sheet right there in line on your tiny screen if you want to. So what we're going to cover in the next hour and a half or so is how to get sources of data onto a Google Sheet, how you can create a Google Sheet, the interface or workspace, how to sort and filter data, how to modify the data, columns and rows, and how to work with and modify the tabs. Some formula basics, some chart basics, sharing and collaboration tools, and then the add-ons, of course. So creating a Google Sheet. There's two ways to do it. If you copy this presentation into your own Drive, you can just go straight to drive.google.com. And of course, you can use the new button to create a Google Sheet, either just a blank one or from a template. Or you can bring in an existing Excel spreadsheet, and then you can open it up and convert it to Sheets if you want. Or you can go directly to sheets.google.com, and it will give you a variety of templates, or you can just create a blank spreadsheet from there. So a lot of really cool templates in there. You can see in the image right there that there is an attendance spreadsheet template and a gradebook template ready to go for you too. But you don't have to use them. All right, so I will be jumping away from this presentation shortly here. A couple of ways to add data into Sheets. You can manually type it in. Again, upload an Excel spreadsheet, and you can even copy and paste, both from an Excel file in Drive or from another sheet, or you can copy information you see on a website, and then you can paste it in and then reformat the information as you please. All right, so next one here is the workspace. So what I'm going to do right now is I am going to jump over to the workspace here. This is that practice file. So if you choose to download that or to click that link, it'll take you to this file here. And you can also, on this file, if you're logged into Google, go to File, make a copy, and have your own copy of this. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is a little bit of verbiage to explain both what Excel has always been and what Google Sheets are. What you're looking at right here, and every time you open up a Google Sheet, a brand new Google Sheet, you're not opening a spreadsheet. Same with Excel. You're not opening up a spreadsheet. You're opening up what's known as a workbook. And nowadays, when you open Excel, it just opens up a single tab, one worksheet. But it's still a workbook. And I'll bring you back to where spreadsheet programs began. If you've ever taken an accounting class, you will find that, and I took an accounting class back in the 80s, back in high school. What they would do nowadays, they kind of don't do it anymore because it's all electronic. Back in the old days, and some schools still use this, they would give you a great big green hardcover book. And that hardcover book would have a bunch of sheets that would kind of look like this with lines on it and headers. And you would use a pencil, always a pencil, never a pen, to write everything in there. And every sheet was a worksheet. And then you used another worksheet and another one. And sometimes you had one for assets. You had another one for credits or debits, bank balances, whatever it may be. But you kept them separate on their own sheets. Sometimes you needed to have multiple sheets to explain everything. If you were a big company with a lot of assets, you couldn't do it all in one sheet. So you'd have multiple ones. And sometimes you'd pull those out, put them in their own workbook with hardbound covers because it just got so big. Well, when you create a Google Sheet or an Excel spreadsheet, ultimately you're creating both the book, which is invisible in this instance, and a single worksheet inside of it. On the bottom of Excel, though, you will find there's a little plus sign down here at the very bottom left, and you can add another sheet. And so in your workbook, you can continue to add as many worksheets as you want. And you can see on the bottom of here, I have a number of these tabs, which are also traditionally known as worksheets inside of this workbook. So the interface itself, I've got a title up here, and I have a file edit view, insert format data. These are the very same headers in the menu that was in Excel 97 and 2000. You'll notice there's no great big ribbon bar here with sections and all kinds of icons because they wanted to keep this simple for you. Below these headers, you've got this menu bar. And this menu bar will change somewhat depending on what you're doing, what you've clicked on. So unlike PowerPoint, though, or Google Slides, unlike that, it won't change as much. Below that, you have a formula window here, and we'll explain how to use that. And then we have this big array here with columns up above it that have designators of A, B, C, and so forth. And then over here on the left, you've got your rows, which are designated by numbers. Every spreadsheet is consisting of cells, and they all have their unique names. So if I click right here, and I'll move this down a little bit. If I click in this cell, this is A1. And I know it's A1 because I can see that it's column A and row 1. This right here would be column B and row 2. And you can see that it's grade and it's grade to let you know this is B2. Now, unlike Excel to the left of this little FX or formula icon here, there's usually another box that will actually say B2. So unlike Excel, you do have to kind of pay attention as to where you're at because you're not going to have that designator box to tell you this is the cell you're in. So cells consist of being in a column. This is column B. You can click on the title letter of any column to select the entire column. And you can select rows by clicking on any row number. And you can see that it highlights the entire row, and this highlights the entire column. A range of cells would be when you want to click and drag through and grab a set of cells, like so. And a range of cells begins with the top leftmost corner, and it ends with the bottom rightmost corner. So this range here, and I've got one highlighted for you right here. This range I've just highlighted begins at F7, F7, and it ends at H13, H13. So a range is designated like this, and there's a colon between it to designate what is the beginning and what is the end of a range. So whenever you see a cell and then a colon and then another cell, know that designates a range. And sometimes you need a range to do certain things like sums or averages. You need to grab all of the values in a set of cells. They might not all be in a single column, Now you can grab a column of data like this, and this would be a range of K4 to K16. All right, other things to think about here. Sometimes you'll put information in cells, and it will be longer than what fits in the cell. And I'll give you a for instance here. This is me typing something that takes up a lot of space. Now you'll notice that this sentence is much longer than the width of column J. And if there's nothing else in these other cells, it will just bleed over visually to let you know. This isn't taking up J1, K1, and L1 and M1. It's just taking up J1, but it bleeds over. But if I type something else over here, it begins to hide what bled over. And if I type something here, it removes the bleed here. And so now I can only see part of what I typed here. But if I click in the cell with a lot more than what fits in the visible width of a column, over here in the formula window, you can actually see everything that is in that cell. And so you can read it in its entirety here too. But you can reformat the width of these columns and the height of rows if you need in order to see everything. And there's two ways to do it. If I go over here to the border that separates J and K, my cursor becomes this arrow. And I can manually click down and drag until I can see everything in here. I'm just going to slide over a little bit on the scroll bar. And so I have made this manually wider. Now I can see everything in it. Now everything down below is going to have this much space to type into. Same thing here. I can drag this over, but there's another quicker way to do it, just like in Excel. You can auto resize the column. So what I'll do is bring this back over. You can auto resize the column or columns so that the longest bit of information in that column will show, and it will automatically resize all of the columns to fit the longest string of information in it. I can do it on a single one. And the way you do it is you go to that same border between the column you're on and the next column to the right. And rather than clicking and dragging manually, you can do a double click right here. And it will auto resize the space to the longest bit of information in it. Same with this one. I can do it here too. But what I'm going to do is go back for a moment. You can also do this with multiple columns. So if I go to J, I can click and drag my cursor over and release and get both columns J and K. And if I go between them and double click, it will auto resize both of them to fit the longest bit of information in those cells. You can do that on all of them. All right, other things to cover here. Of course, you've got your share button over here on the right-hand side. If you've been playing with docs or slides, you know what that's all about. You do have a comment area here. You can add comments. You can do them here. And comments can show up. You just highlight something and then click comment. And then on the right-hand margin or next to it, you'll have a place where you can add a comment. So if I wanted to add a comment about this, I can click on this and then choose insert comment. So if you add another collaborator in here and you give them rights to edit or comment, they can go in and click anywhere in your cells and they can add a comment and you will see that. And then you can respond to that comment if you want, have a conversation about it, make changes if needed, and when you're done, you can hit resolve. Okay, so I think we covered most things on here. Let's see. On the very bottom left, next to the add a sheet, you've got an all sheets here. And if you click that, you'll see that you've got some stuff in here too, sorting and filtering formulas. What these are the names of those tabs. When you add a new tab, it's just going to say something like sheet 1, sheet 2, but you can rename them. And if you do, this little hamburger menu right here will allow you to just jump over to a particular tab that you've created. I've got more than will show up in that little scroll area down there on the bottom. And so this could prove helpful. If I've got 12 months worth of attendance, I could quickly jump to the February tab in the March tab, and so forth. All right, so adding data manually into a sheet. It's just as simple as what you saw here, me typing away and adding stuff in there. If you want to remove something, you can just highlight those cells and hit delete, and they'll go away for you. So that's one way to bring stuff in. Another is to go to File and Import. And if you go to Import, you can actually go to Drive and then go hunt down a folder that was shared with you. And dig into that folder, find an Excel sheet, or find another Google sheet. And you can open it up, and you could bring in the data from that particular spreadsheet. So we covered resizing columns. Oh, by the way, you can do the same thing with rows. With the rows, all you have to do is take your cursor, put it between a row, and you can manually drag it, or you can double click it, and it will resize to whatever's in that row, the biggest thing in that row. So let's talk a little bit now about data types. You may have played with these in Excel. I want you to see where they're at here as well. So just like with Excel, you've got the ability to say what kind of data is in here. So if I had a cost and I was having values in here, 4,533, and maybe this was for printing over the course of the year, and then I had office tools, and for the year my school district was spent $563,432 across the school district for office tools. You'll see that these come in automatically as currency, but if you didn't and you needed that to happen, you can highlight those or highlight the entire column, and you can go right here in this area. Here's where you've got format as currency, percentages, and if you have decimal places, you can decrease and increase the decimal place. So if you do something like a division or multiplication, and this is going to wind up being dollar figures, but because of the division or multiplication, you get like a 0.8937, but you need it to be in cents, just two digits. You can increase or decrease the decimal places so that it's just two places in the cents area. But you can also click right here, and you'll see a bunch of the same stuff. Automatically, if this is checked, it will automatically add dollar signs if it believes it is. You can say this is plain text, and plain text will remove any formatting it does with numbers. You'll notice in the column where I type those two costs that they're right justified, which happens automatically. It's an accounting norm to right justify all of the dollar figures. But if this were numbers and you didn't want them to be seen as text, you could choose plain text, and you'll notice that it bumps it over to the left, like anything else you would typically type. You've also got numbers, and when I click that, it gets rid of the dollar signs because it's no longer seeing it as currency because I told it not to. Just look at it as numbers. You've got scientific notation as well. So if you go past 2 digits, you can go ahead and do the e-notation. It'll do it automatically and tell you how many places after that are still available. Accounting, of course, brings us back. Now, if you have a negative number when you say this is accounting, a minus $543, it puts parentheses around it, which again is an accounting norm. It lets you know visibly that this is a loss. And of course, you've got currency rounded. If you didn't want to have any of the penny places, it'll get rid of the penny places for you as well, just give you a whole dollars. And then there's dates and times as well. So I'm going to do over here in this column is go March 30th, 2019. And I'm going to choose it. And it's already picked up on the fact that it's a date, because just like in accounting norms, it justifies it to the right. If I go over here, again to my data type, I can go over here and say, you know what, I'd like it in this format, and it will turn it into that for you. It's important that it knows when you do dates with slashes that this is indeed a date format, because that slash that you see right here, a slash in Excel and in Sheets signifies in formulas division. And so you don't want Excel or you don't want Sheets to see this as 3 divided by 30 divided by 2019. So by going in and forcibly telling it, you know what, this is a date, it removes any possible error by Sheets of trying to turn this into a formula and performing that calculation. Now, if I had time involved with this too, so what I'll do is go back here to March, and I'm going to add in here, let's say that I wanted to have a date timestamp, and I put, here, I'll do March 30, 20, it wants to turn this back into something else. All right, so I'm gonna do March 30th, 2019, and I'm gonna say 0827, date and time. If I click it and go over here, I can say date time, and it will convert it into the slashed month, day, year, and then gives me the time and minutes, hours, minutes, and seconds as well. So you'll have that formatting too, if you were to need it. And you can do this for a single cell, or you can do this for an entire column. If you just need it for a single cell, just click on that cell, choose the data format, or pick an entire column if it's all going to have that kind of an entry, and choose that data format, and it will push that formatting of that data down the entire column for you. So on the next tab on that practice sheet, you'll see a little bit here as well, sources of data. And it says you can manually add data here. And of course, I could just click in here in any of these pre-formatted cells and add my data in here. Or I can go File, Import, and there's little windows here to show you what that process would look like. So you can refer to this as you go. Now, the next thing I'm going to cover real quick here is the things you see visually here. These are your cell colors as well as your borders and stuff. Any kind of text, if you click it, and again, you see this is longer than column A, so it bleeds over. You've got over here on the top your text formatting. So if I highlight this, you've got bold, italics, strike through. If you needed to put down some correction for somebody else to see, they could see the strike through that you've added. You've got text color, and just like with docs and slides, you have 64 web safe colors. And web safe means that it should render that same color, whether it's on a Chromebook, PC, or a Mac, or on a tablet, because these colors are universally understood and coding to render these exact colors for you. Now, I can't account for really old monitors because sometimes those just simply won't render colors as rich and vibrant as a brand new monitor would, something that might be a high definition monitor. But if these colors weren't enough for you, you can go down here to custom, click it, and you can pick any color you want. In fact, there is a rainbow bar down here that will help you approximate a color, and then you can choose from light to dark what kind of color you want, and then you can click OK, and you'll see that it highlights it in that color. If you want to add color to a cell, that's your fill, which is your paint bucket right here. And so what you have to do is you have to click where you want to, so select what you want to affect, and then go up here to your fill, and if you click it, same 64 web safe colors, and you can also add custom colors. And you notice right here, there's now this blue, because I clicked on custom for the text, and I chose that blue. Any custom colors you create using this link right here, they will show up here. So if I wanted this to be, instead of present, I wanted in green, I wanted it to be something else, I can go to custom and choose a whole other color. And if I want, say, this color right here, and click OK, it will now make it that color. And if I go to the paint bucket or the fill, you'll see that that custom color is available for you too, to use throughout your spreadsheet. This is unique to the spreadsheet. So when you make custom colors, you will forever see those custom colors with that particular spreadsheet. It doesn't move across spreadsheets. If I make a new spreadsheet, it's not going to have those custom colors ready to go for me. Now the text you can see here is black, and of course I could highlight that text and change that up. I just put a different color in each of these for a visual representation. And let's see here. Another thing that I want to talk about is when text overflows. Now, here's another example of text that is so long it overflows the width of this column. Now, I could, of course, go over here and manually resize this column, or I could double click right there and have it auto resize. But the problem comes in is this: if I'm going to have a bunch more fields of information with data in here, and they're all somewhat longer, if I were to make them all as wide as the longest entry, I would have to scroll to the right forever to find all of the other bits of information to read it. That can be a pain. So Excel has had it for the longest time, and Sheets does too. You can word wrap. So if you decide this is the width of the column I want, you can word wrap it so that the text will wrap and make that cell bigger. So what I'm going to do right here in G is I'm just going to make this a little bit longer because it's notes. And what I'll do is click here. If I want to word wrap this cell or word wrap a column, I click on the cell or the whole column. In this case, I'll just do the cell. And then what I'll do is go to Format. And Format has text wrapping about 2/3 of the way down. And you'll see that by default, it's overflow. It just flows over to the next column if there's nothing in that next cell. But if I want, I can go right here to wrap. And it will resize the height of the row to fit all of this information. So if I do this for the whole column, and I say Format, text wrapping, and wrap, it will make every single cell that has information longer than the current width wrap. And anytime I choose a new row and I add info that's long, it will auto wrap into there as well. So it saves you from having an incredibly long spreadsheet. Now, another way to make a column smaller is if you've got a header. And when I mean header, I mean that first row of information in a spreadsheet. It's usually the name of the information that's going to fall below it. So these are all considered to be headers, or kind of like titles of the information below them in the column. If you are always going to have, say in the instance of state, a short entry, 2 digits, CA or AZ or MS, then you don't need it to be as long as the word state. You can actually scrunch things a bit by adding an angle to your text. So instead of having my horizontal word state, what I did was I grabbed state and I grabbed zip as well. So I grabbed both of these cells and I went up to Format again, and just above merge cells is a line. And that can let me go left, center, or right. But I've also got text rotation. So I can bump it to the left and I can center it, but then I can rotate it too. And so under text rotation, I've got tilt downward. I can also make it tilt upward, stack it vertically, or rotate it up or down. I chose a -45-degree angle, which is a tilt downward. But I can go more extreme. Now, before I did any of this, it looked like this, which is no tilt at all. So what I did was highlighted those and went Format, text rotation, and I chose an angle. And there's a bunch of preset angles in here. And I just chose the -45. But what if I chose a -75? As you can see, it takes up a lot less space horizontally when it's at this sort of an angle. And then I can actually double click on the widths. And these two columns will be as short as these short entries. I don't expect anything more than 5 digits for zip and nothing more than 2 digits for state. And it winds up taking up a lot less space visually. I can see it all there, but the header is still fully visible to me. So if you had a bunch, if you were doing some sort of a monthly attendance, and this was January, but you had abbreviations, JAN, FEB, and so forth, and you just had something like an X or a 2-digit number, you could do that to all of these headers, so it takes up a lot less space, and see all 12 months visually. in one fell swoop without having to have everything horizontal. So just remember, you're not stuck with that perfectly horizontal entry. And of course, this is in the presentation. You'll have that available for you as well. We talked about adding background colors. The thing that we're going to talk about next is conditional formatting of a sheet. As you add data into a sheet, maybe you would like to have certain values brought visually to your attention. If you had a big sheet that had the number of tardies for every student over a course of 12 months, that's going to be a really big Excel spreadsheet, because you may have 300 or 400 students in your school, and you're going to have the numbers of presents, the number of excused absences, unexcused absences, tardies, and so forth. Well, if you were going to keep track of how many times a student were tardy so that you could generate a letter to send home to figure out if there's any kind of assistance needed, or just to remind the parents the value of a student being in school every day, well, you may want to have something visually tell you, hey, this person has met the threshold of 3 tardies or 5 tardies. If you have this huge spreadsheet, though, with 300 students, it's really difficult to scroll and scroll and scroll and look at every data field to figure out whether they have or exceeded a limit. Well, you can do what's known as conditional formatting, which will tell the spreadsheet, look, if I meet a certain value or threshold in any of these cells, I want a color to show up. And so if they exceed, say, 3 tardies, the 3 that is in the number of tardies will automatically pop up in red or some other flag that you want to see visually. So you don't have to scroll the whole sheet. The colors will tell you, hey, you need to do something about this issue right here, or this student is getting close to the threshold at which I need to send a letter. Maybe the teacher or I can make, or the vice principal can make a phone call to talk to the parent before it gets to the red. And you can do that using conditional formatting. So I'll show you what that looks like here. In this sheet, I've got absences in September 2019, and they're broken down by week, and they're broken down by room numbers. So maybe an administrator is having me track the number of absences by week in each classroom, so they can then zero in on that classroom to find out, okay, which student or students am I having issues with, and who do I need to make a phone call about? So I've got weeks 1 through 4, room numbers are here, and then I've got the number of absences. And of course, these would be excused and unexcused, perhaps. The information I'm interested in doing some conditional formatting is in this range right here, from B3 down to G6. So what I can do is I can highlight these, and if I go to fill, I can choose a fill color, but below all of those great colors and my custom colors is this guy right here, conditional formatting. If I choose it, it's going to say single color. Is that what you're looking for? It's going to show me the range, B3 through G6, and it's going to ask me, well, how do you want to format these cells? Well, it's a drop-down menu. So you can tell it to format the cells if they're empty or not, if it has a certain text, if it has a date, or if it's greater, less than, or equal to, or you can do a custom. So I'm looking at these right here, and let's say that 2 was the point at which I'm going to make my first contact with that teacher. So if I say that this is greater than, and then I can go in here and put 1, because 2 is greater than 1. I need it to be 2 or above. So if it's 3, I need the same thing to happen. Well, the moment I chose greater than and I typed in 1, it began applying that rule. And so it threw that color in there. And so I, as an administrator, can look at this spreadsheet and see instantly, oh, which classrooms do I need to talk to? Well, it defaults to this light pea green, but right here you got fill color. So you can actually have it be whatever color you want. You can also do custom bold, italic, underline, and you can even put a custom text color if you want. So if I wanted to, I could put a red and bold, and you'll see that now the 2s are in red and they're in bold. So I can add additional formatting to just kind of scream at me, I need to go talk to these teachers. I'm going to hit cancel though, and I'm going to hit add another rule instead, and this time I'll go to color scale. Color scale allows you to say, with the most minimum value, give me a certain color, and the most maximum value, give me another color. And I can even say, if it's in the midway point of all the values, give me a whole other color. Well, once I did that, it gave me a default green as well, going from dark green to white. And it assigned to the minimum value a darker color, and to the maximum value, white. So I can see now my 2s are in white, but notice that the 0s are the minimum values and they're in that dark green, and the 1s are somewhere in between. And so it's a lighter green, it's the middle of the road. And so it runs through these shades as it goes through. Now, if I had a 0 to 1, 2, 3, and 4, I would see all of these shade colors in here. So if I went over here and said, you know what, that's not a 0, that's a 3. And this were a 3. So it begins to try to say, well, that's the max value now. And here's 2, and you'll notice that 2 is a little bit lighter, and 3 is white. So now I have a couple of different colors of shading here. Well, if this one wasn't a 0, but a 4, now the 4 becomes white, and the 3 becomes lighter, and the 2 darker, and then the 1 a little bit darker, and the 0. And now it's using all the possible shades. And so I'm looking for all the white ones. You're not stuck with that though. You can determine the colors. So if you want the minimum value to be green, and you want the maximum value to be yellow, I'm not yellow, but let's say red, and you wanted to do a midpoint, you could do a mid-value number, and you could say, you know what, that one is yellow. And so now to try to put some shades in between, and you know that green is good, yellow is warning, and red is, oh, there's a problem here. And you can see that the 3 and the 4 and the 2 have different shading going on here. And I had a question about percentages. Yes, if these values were all percentages, you would still have that same thing. So mid-value is a number. You see that you can also do it in percentages instead of numbers. So if these are all percents, you can say the minimum, maximum, and middle values that are percentages, and it will give you the same color, whatever color you want for 100%, whatever color for 0, and then choose a mid. So anything close to 50% could be a whole other color as well. You just do that right here. Instead of number, you choose percentile. Same thing here, percentile and percentile. So if these were all percents, you would have percents. Then you can go in here and say percentile, and then you can type in 100%, 50%, and so forth, and then 0%. So yes, you can adjust that for that as well. So that was the example I showed you. Again, you're going to have that handout, and you also have the presentation, which will give you some information on how to have that occur. So the next thing I'm going to talk about here is formulas and using formulas, which is the heart and soul of spreadsheets. Now, there are simple formulas. There are the ones you use every single day, like summing up numbers, maybe getting an average, maybe doing a calculation and giving a percentage. And then there are the very complicated formulas. And if you are a heavy, intermediate to a heavy Excel user, then you know those formulas can get really complicated. Quite often what happens is there are a lot of users of spreadsheets, but there's usually 1 or 2 people, maybe at the district office or the school office, who actually create those spreadsheets. And those are the ones that, you know, they work late. They're really taking a lot of time scratching their heads, working out the formulas. They spend a lot of time Googling how to make a certain formula work. and they read what experts say. They might even have an Excel book or two sitting up on their shelf filled with different formulas and how to manage them. And then ultimately, once they've racked their brains, get a few more gray hairs, and they get the formulas down the way they want them, then they make a copy of that, and then they will give that spreadsheet to everyone. So they do the heavy lifting on attendance or grading spreadsheets, and then they give them to everyone. And all you do is plug in numbers, and magic happens behind the scenes. I'll talk a little bit here about some basics in formulas, but just know that when it comes to spreadsheet formulas, Excel or in Sheets, what usually happens is you learn how to do formulas based upon a need. You need to figure out one thing, and so you learn it. And if you have to do it again, you might remember it. Third time, it sticks in your brain. And then you have to figure out another thing, so you learn another formula. There's no way you're going to know every formula unless you're always using Excel and you're always building formulas, or you take a 1-week class in Excel spreadsheeting. But it's learned by going, just learning as you need to. And so don't worry about knowing a lot about formulas. When you understand how a formula on its most basic level works, when you look up how to do a certain thing, you're going to find that it's all there for you. Now, formulas are created in the formula window, and the formula window is this guy right here. So you'll see the words FX, or letters FX. This is your formula window. And this is where you would type in your formulas, but it's also the place where you see text. Same thing. So there's either going to be text or there's going to be a formula in here. And the formulas usually begin with an equal sign as well. And then sometimes there are parentheses, more often than not, to enclose the formula. And also they're used to ensure the proper order of operations, and we'll talk about that. When you're done, you just click enter to finish the formula. It creates the calculation and puts the result in the cell. You can go back to the formula window, though. If you click in that cell that has the resulting calculation, you can go to the formula window and you will still see the original formula that created the calculation that you see in the cell. So down here in your handout or your training sheet, you will see this here. You'll see a tab that says formulas, and there's a couple of formulas that we'll run through here real quick. So I've got some here, and it has reusing a formula and creating a sum, and I've got monthly tallies here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and highlight these and delete these values for you here. And so I've got a January entry and a February entry, and I've got all these different, these could be for a room number or for a person. And then I have the monthly running tally, which is right here. So the monthly running tally is going to be the sum of this month and this month. So I'm going to go right into this cell because this is where I designated I would like the calculation result to show up. So I'm going to go right here, and I said formulas begin with an equal sign. And then what I'm going to do is go sum. And what I love about Sheets in Excel is that when you begin to start typing the operand, the thing that actually does the formula, makes it work, when I type in the S for sum, I get all these examples of different formula types I could use. And no, I can't tell you I know what all these do because there are thousands of them. But if I go in SU, then it becomes even shorter. And these are all of the sum type operands. I've got sum if, which means give me a sum only if it meets a certain criteria. Give me a subtotal. Give me sum ifs, which means give me the sum if it meets more than one criteria. So there's all kinds of stuff in here. Don't worry about knowing them all. If you get to a problem you're trying to solve and you look it up, you'll probably get some of these as your solutions. But sum is your easiest. And I could keep typing sum, but it's right here, so I can click. And if I click, it will actually give me the opening parentheses available for me. So it says sum, value 1, value 2, and so forth. You can even do a sum of a range. So you notice it says A2 to A100. So you can sum up an entire range of values too. So what I want to do though is I just want to sum up that 12 and the 8. So I'm going to go over here now and I'm going to click in that cell. Well, that cell is A3. And so you'll see it says sum A3 right there, ready to go, telling me that I'm not adding 12, I'm adding whatever is in that cell A3. And then what I'm going to do is hit a plus sign, and then I'm going to say the next value I want is in this cell. So I'm going to click there, and you see it says B3. It doesn't say 8. It's whatever is in that cell. And so I'll close this parenthesis, and I'll hit enter. And you'll see that it gives me the calculation, which is 20. If I click back in that cell, it still says 20, but up here in the formula window, it tells me the formula I used to get that total, 12 plus 8, or A3 plus B3. But what's cool is once you figure it out, I have all these other ones to do too. I don't have to click in here and now do equals this one plus this one and go to the next one and do that again. I can reuse the formula. And all I have to do is I'll click away when I've got the calculation and then go back to the cell again. There's a little blue box right here in the bottom right corner of this formula. And this will appear in any cell that has a formula in it. So what I'll do is I'll click in this box, and what I'll do is drag that box down through all these cells and release. What it does is it takes that original formula of A3 plus B3 and changes it for A4 plus B4, A5 plus B5, and A6 plus B6. So it changes the formula relative to the cell it's in and the two cells on the left, so that I now reuse the formula to do the rest. So I can go that route, or I can do what's known as flash fill. Flash fill allows me to go to a box and double click on it. And what it does is it auto fills downward that formula and changes it relative, ready to go. So I don't even have to do the click and drag. I just create the formula, click away, click back, and if these are all adjacent, all I have to do is double click on that box and it will autofill the rest of the formulas going all the way down. So if you have a column that's got 450 different totals you're going to have to do, just do the first one, double click on the box, and it will just zoom down the page and autofill that formula all the way down that column. All right, so we'll go down here and take a look at sum, which you see right there. We've already got that. I've also got average. So if I want to get an average of these monthly running totals, I can do that. It says average of A3 to A11. So if I wanted to get this average of January, I could do that. All I have to do is click in here and go equals. And because I want an average, here it is right here. I'll choose average. It opens up the parentheses ready to go. And then I can go up here and drag through to get a range. I want all of these, I want an average of all of these values. When I release, you'll see that the formula has that range, A3 to A11. I close the parentheses, I hit enter. My average is 28.78 out of those values. I could have done the same thing with the monthly running total if I wanted that too. Simply click away here and go equals average. Well, there it is. And then I will just click and drag through my monthly running tally. Close my parentheses and hit enter. By the way, you do not have to close the parentheses. If you just hit enter, it'll automatically add the closed parentheses for you. Now, counting numbers. This is another interesting formula. If you need to know how many numbers are in here, let's say you had a bunch of empty ones in here. And you see as I'm deleting some of these Januaries, it changes the average. Maybe I want to find out how many entries I have, and I don't want to count the blanks. You can do that too, and that's count, and that will count how many of these numbers are in here. So if I go equals count, there it is, click, and then I can go ahead and grab the range, count the numbers in this range. Now, I won't even close the parentheses. I'm just going to hit enter. There are 6 values in here, and you can count them yourself, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sometimes this comes in handy. Max, if you want to know the max number, you can do that too. Equals max. Here it is. I'll choose it. And then I'll go ahead and choose these numbers. It's not February. Let me back up here. All right. I want from here to here. and hit enter. So the max value, the highest value is 15. So maybe that's something that you would be interested in, knowing what the highest number was received. Same thing with minimum. You just go equals min, parentheses, and I'll do the same range and hit enter. And the minimum number is 3. So these are just examples of one of the hundreds to 1,000 different possible operands you could use when creating a formula in Sheets. It's just to give you a feel for how the formulas flow, the kinds of things you're looking for. Now you can also count if something is not a number. This happens quite often. You'll use some form of an attendance spreadsheet and you just do X's. The X shows they're in or not. Well, you know, that's not a number. If you put ones in there, you could count all of the ones and it would tell you the total number of people present. But maybe what you're looking for is an X, or maybe you put P for present and A for absence, maybe a UA for unexcused, T for tardy. And these aren't numbers, and maybe you need to count the numbers. Well, you can do that too. Here I've got January, February, and March, and I want to count the number of X's in this quarter and give me the total here. I can do that by counting, but I'm not just counting. I'm counting if it's something, and that's where the count if comes into play. Equals, count, and here's count if. It opens up a parenthesis, and what it says as a helper is I need a range of numbers and I need to know what the criteria is I'm looking for to count it. So let's go ahead and grab the range. The range, of course, is from January to February. And then it wants to know what criteria it's looking for. So I'll do a comma, and the criterion could be a number, but in this case, it's not. When you're working with text, text needs to be in quotations. Numbers don't necessarily. So I'm going to do a quote, and I'm going to say X, close the quote, and then I'll close the parentheses and hit enter. So again, I'll click here so you can see here's the formula in the formula window. Count if in the span of F4 to H4, these guys right here, comma, the criterion being an X. And because it's a letter, it's inside of parentheses to let it know, and it counts it. Of course, I could do the same thing here. I could drag down on that blue box, and it will count if there's an X in every single one of those rows. So just know that you can count more than just numbers. You can also do a count if it's greater than a particular value. I only want to know if a value in this box or these sets of cells is greater than 30. So maybe there's going to be a reward like a pizza party for a classroom because they have reached a certain number. So to make it easier for myself, I run a formula to do so. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to count if it's greater than 30. So equals count if again, and here again is count if, and it wants to know what's the range. Well, the range is these 3 months, comma, and it lets you know right off the bat, look, if this is going to be a greater than or less than, just like with text, you need to put it in quotations. So I'm going to say, quote, greater than 30, unquote. Close those parentheses and hit enter. Well, I only have 2 values greater than 30 because 28 obviously is not. I can click here, drag down to reuse that formula. Same thing here, 2 values, and in this case, there are 3 values greater than 30. And if I click in the cell, you see that the formula is right there, visible for you. You can also count blanks. There are some blank cells in here. Maybe you want to find out, maybe there's supposed to be an entry in every single one of these cells. Maybe it's to discover if a teacher forgot to put in a present or unexcused absence, they have to put some designator. And maybe, again, it's a huge spreadsheet and you don't want to have to go through looking to see, you want to know right off the bat, all right, is there something for every cell in the spreadsheet? Or do I have to pour through the whole spreadsheet to know? Well, if you run a quick formula that will tell you if there are no blanks, you can move on because there is an entry in every single cell. You can do that automatically by saying count if it's blank. So formula looks like this right here. you're using count blank and giving it a range. So I'll do it right here. Actually, I'll do it right here. Equals count blank, and there it is. It wants a range, and then that's it. So I'm going to scroll up a little bit. I want this entire range. And then I'll close my parentheses and hit enter. There are 3 blank cells. Well, if this was an enormous spreadsheet, I could just take a look at this one cell right here to let me know, are there any blank holes? If there's not, I can move on to the next month, and the next month, oh wait, March has 1 entry that's blank, and then I can scan it until I find it. Remember too, what I showed you about conditional formatting, you can actually highlight all the cells in the spreadsheet and say, I want you to give me a cell in red if it's blank. Every cell will be in red until something is put in it. And so visually, you could also see if something is blank because it'll be the lone cell that shows up in red. All you have to do is highlight the range of cells you expect values in when you do your conditional formatting. Okay, so I mentioned earlier order of operations, also known as PEMDAS. This is the order in which a calculation has to occur to be done accurately. And this goes all the way back to early Algebra 1. When you are considering a formula, you have to know what's going to be calculated first, then next, and then next. So an example here is this one right here. 3 plus 4 divided by 3 plus 6. Well, you'll notice that the 3 plus 4 is in parentheses, and that's for a reason. Because in the order of operations, anything in parentheses gets done first. And so because of that, if I put parentheses around the 3 plus 4, it will calculate that to be 7 first before it divides it. If I don't, then it's going to go 3 plus 4. The 4 and only the 4 will be divided by 3 because it's next to the division symbol. I want the 3 and the 4 calculated together before the division occurs. So I have to put in parentheses first. Next is exponents, and there are no exponents here. But if the 4 were squared or cubed, then the next thing that would happen is exponents. So it would start with the 3 plus 4 cubed in parentheses, and it would get ready to do it, but it would do the 4 cubed first. So these two compete with each other, and exponents takes precedence. And so the 4 gets cubed into what? 4 by 4 is 16, and then 16 times 4 is 64. So it would be 3 plus 64 in the parentheses. Then the division and the rest occurs. Hopefully that makes sense to you. After these two are done with their competition, then multiplication and division will occur on anything left. And so division would happen next. So this 7 gets calculated first and then divided by the 3. After that is addition and subtraction. So the remainder of the 3 plus 4 divided by the 3 will now be added to the 6, or minus 6 if it were a subtraction symbol. Keep these in mind when you're building formulas. If you get a result that does not look right, go into that formula and make sure that you have parentheses around the stuff you want to be taken care of first before the rest of the calculation occurs, okay? All right, so let's see, anything else in here? Yes, I've got 2 others here. This one here is a whole other formula. Before I do that one, I'm going to talk a little bit about absolute versus relative cell values. Now, when I did this formula, it was A3 plus B3. And when I went ahead and used the formula on the cell below it, it automatically moved it from A4 plus B4, and then C, or A5 plus B5, and then A6 plus B6. Really easy. And so the rule just automatically happens. Sheets can take that calculation and run with it when you use that formula in the other cells. But sometimes there are conditions where that just won't happen. And so I'm going to remove this conditional formatting thing here to give some more workspace here. This right here is your typical multiplication table. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In order to do your multiplication table, you begin with 1 times 1, and you want to put your result there. And I did the first one for you automatically. If you look here, it says 1. But if you look in the formula window, it says L31 times K32, because you're using the cell, not the actual value when you create the formulas. L31 is this guy right here, and K32 is this guy right here. Well, if I go over here and say, okay, so this calculation is done, so I should be able to drag this formula over to get the rest of this row done too, right? Seems like it would be logical. So if I go here and drag this over, whoa, I don't get a 2 times 1 and a 3 times 1 and a 4 times 1. So obviously this is wrong. If I look at 2, what happens is I get M31, which is this guy, times L32. Well, L32 is right here, not right here. So what happened is when I shift the formula by dragging it, what it does is it uses this L shape. So when I moved it over, it went 2 times this one, and then 3 times this one, and 4 times this one. It didn't go all the way back to here to do the calculation because it translated, the formula didn't translate well when I said reuse it over here and here and here. And there's a way around that to fix it. And the way that you do that is when you do your first formula cell, if you think this may occur, you change up the formula. And you do that by adding a $ where it's needed. This is an Excel rule. It's a formula trick that they've had forever. If you add a $ before a particular value, what will happen is it will lock in that value. Well, A1 is the column and the row. If I put the $ in front of the 1, it will allow the column to change to B, C, and so forth when I continue to use that formula, but it will lock in the 1, that particular row, and only force that 1 to be there. But if I do a $ in front of the column and the row designator, both of them will stay exactly the same. A1 will always be A1. If I use this one, it can be B1, C1, D1, but it will always be 1. So if I go here to this formula, I want this guy here to always be this cell. So I'll go up here to the K32. I want to lock in K32 so it never changes as I drag it to the right. So what I do up here in the formula window is I add a $ in front of the K, signifying the column name can never change, and a $ in front of the 32, and that signifies that the row can never change. So it is always going to be K32. It will never change when I reuse the formula. I'll hit enter. It's still a 1. There are my $. And now if I take this and drag it over to the right, 2, 3, 4, and 5, because it continues to use K32. And as I click through these, you'll see it is still K32 because I locked it in with that $ before the column and the row. This is a trick that Excel has had forever, and it will save you when you need to fill out a bunch of things like this. So same thing here. If I move this down, I get a 1, but it's supposed to be 1 times 2. What happened? Well, because it's got that $ in there. So what I need to do is fix this up. I'm going to click in here and delete it. And I'm going to say that this is equal to this cell times, which is an asterisk, this cell, and hit enter. The 2 is going to work. But what I need to do again is go into the formula and lock in this K33 now. So I put a $ in front of the K and a $ in front of the 33 and hit enter. And now I can drag this over and the same thing occurs here. And I can do this for each. So if I try going down this way, what happens? Ooh, I still get a 2 and a 4 and a 4. So you can do the same thing to the rest of these, 1 row by 1 row, fix them, and then drag them across. And so yeah, you're basically having to do 5 cells to lock in these values. But when you're done, you can drag them over and get everything you need. So I can go equals this cell times this cell. And right here, I'll just go ahead and prompt it, put in the $K, $34, equals this cell times this cell, add the dollar signs to lock that value in, and goes equals this cell times that cell. And lastly here, we will lock in the column and the row. Now I can grab these three cells and take that blue box and drag it over, and I'm done. I know this is a lot if you've never done this sort of thing, or you've never looked at absolute versus relative values. But once you get this down, when a formula doesn't work right, and you figure out why it keeps shifting in the wrong way, you can lock in the correct values for your formula. That becomes important when you're doing formulas. So the next thing I'm going to do here is just back away completely from number type formulas and show you some of the other kind of formulas that are available for you in Excel to help you out. So the one we're going to look at here is concatenate, and we're going to reuse again that flash fill feature. So if you've never heard of concatenate, concatenate is a tool in spreadsheet programs that allows you to combine two different fields together. In this case, we're going to add the first name and the last name together so that they come together in one field. So we'll leverage those two fields to the left, and we'll combine them together, and then we're also going to add a space in between them so that it's David space Sherman, okay? When that's done, we're going to actually take the values and make them, instead of formulas, we're going to make them be an actual value instead of a calculated value. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. So we're going to start with concatenate. Equals concatenate. And there it is right there, concatenate. String 1, string 2, so forth. So the first bit of info we want is this one. And then I'm going to put a comma. And you'll see it gives you this example right here. If it's text, just like we did with the X's up above, if it's text, it needs to be in quotes. So I'm going to start a quote and put that space, that empty space, and then close the quotes, comma, this value. So when this concatenation is done, it's going to add David and then a space and then Sherman. I'll close the parentheses and hit enter, and there it is. Now flash fill, I mentioned, lets you click into a working formula, go to the blue box and just double click. And there you go. This could be 500 rows of names. That one click, that one formula and that one double click will take care of the other 499 cells all the way down the spreadsheet. Saves you a ton of work. But if you look, these all say what you want, but they're formulas. Well, what if I want the actual values to be in here? David Sherman, not a formula that created David Sherman. Well, Word, Excel has had this feature forever. It's how you paste it. So if I highlight these cells and I go edit, copy, I can go to edit, and instead of a paste, you can use Paste Special, which has been around forever in Microsoft Office. And in here, I can say, I would like just the values. Paste the values. Oops, you know what? I put it in the wrong place. Let me go back. Control C, and then I'm going to go over here and highlight this cell and go edit, paste, values. There we go. Same thing visually, but if I click in here, it's David Sherman, not a formula, Sarah capital. So here's the formula, here's the actual value. This takes it away from the formula. I just use this to create the combination. This will give me the actual values. So what happens if I go down here and delete all this? They're still there. So concatenate can be used to combine values in this column and then copy and paste the values somewhere else and then throw away this column because you don't need it anymore. You just use it as an interim measure to get the values together and then copied and pasted the values here. Then you can just go ahead and throw this column away. You don't need it anymore. All right, so I'm hoping that helps you out a little bit. We talked about cells, cell ranges, and then we went through formulas, and we did both cells and ranges in there in those formulas. And we talked a little bit about the formula window to help you out as well. So I'm hoping that that helps with getting your brain around formulas itself as a starter. It's just a taste. Again, you learn formulas because you have to. It's just the way. No one sits around saying, what if, and then they play around in Excel. It's usually because you've got to do something and then you learn it. Maybe you take notes, put it on a Google Doc, and then the next time you need to do it, you visit the spreadsheet, look at the formula, maybe your notes as to how you figured it out. Here's your slide on reusing formulas. Again, that's available for you. More complicated formulas. I think we covered most of this stuff here. Adding borders. You'll notice that in a lot of my spreadsheets here, there are some form of a border. So maybe not on this one right here, but on the previous one, there were lots of borders in here and so forth. Creating a border is pretty easy. All you have to do, you can pick a cell, or you can pick a column or a row, or pick a range that you want borders on. It's right here on your menu bar, under borders. If you click it, you'll see there's all kinds of different borders right here. One is for every single line to have a border, just the interior, just the middle vertically, just the outside, left, top, right, and bottom. Or if you've got borders, you can clear them out right here. You also have border colors, and you have styles of borders available to you too. So if I wanted to, I could go ahead and highlight this right here, let's say these values, and I can go to border, and I can say, I would like those to have this big line right here. And if it can, it'll put it in there. So I noticed nothing popped in there. So we'll go back to something that has nothing, make it a little easier on ourselves. Border, outside, and let's see if I can make, yep, it is double line because that's the last thing I picked. So the outside borders have double lines, and then I can click on it again, and I can say, you know what, I would like the interior to have a single. So I'm gonna go back to single and interior. And so the interior ones have a single line while the external has this double line right here. So again, if I wanted to do that here, I'll go over here and remove everything. So you'll see there's no borders. And then I'll highlight this, and I'm going to choose double lines, do the outside, and there you go. And then I'll do it again, and I'll change the border to single and just do the insides. So lots of different ways that you can format borders here. If you want to get rid of a border, you can. You can do a particular border. So like on January, if I didn't want to have these lefts, I could get rid of them. I could go and highlight all of these. And I can go here, and I'll say nothing. And then I'll highlight it again, and I'll say, give me the right borders. And so now I've got right borders only. Of course, they're not double because I didn't pick double. But I could do that and get double lines there, but I won't have any lines here. So you can adjust things as you please. Merging cells, sometimes like a title or a header cell, you want to have that span more than one column. You can do that pretty easily too by merging cells. So I'll go ahead and move this over so I can see here. So I've got Mary, David, and John. And what I'll do is I want to put the word name, but I want it to be across the top, not just in a single cell. So what I'll do is I'll click here, highlight all three cells, and go Format, Merge Cells, and I'll merge them horizontally. So now I get one big cell that spans all of that. I'll click in here, and go first names. And then I'll highlight this, bold, make the font bigger, and I will center it. And then lastly, if I want, I can add color, just like that. You can undo merges if later on you change your mind. You can just go in here and highlight these cells and then go to Format, Merge, and you'll have Unmerge, which will mess everything up for us, but it does its best to try to make that work for us. So you can unmerge cells if they've been previously merged. Sorting and filtering data, they're two different things, but kind of similar to each other. You can sort data by columns, basically saying sort it by this, or you can say sort it by this first, and then this criteria, and then this criteria, and it will sort the whole sheet and leave the header up on top. Or you can do a filter. What a filter is kind of like a sort. It's saying look for this information and hide everything else that doesn't meet that criteria. So I'll show you how to do this here as well. So I'll find my tab on the bottom here, sorting and filtering. You'll see that I've got some districts and campuses. They span 3 or 4 or 5 different school districts. And then campus names are right here. So I bet this one, this should be something else. So I'm just going to say Cutler Elementary School. There we go, get that correct. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do some sorting. And first I'll sort by district to show you how that works. And then I'm going to sort it secondarily by campus. So it's going to put the districts together. And for those districts that have more than one campus, it's going to alphabetically sort the campuses too. So I'm going to do that by just going over here. I'll highlight district and go data. And it says I can sort the sheet by column A, but I want to do column A and B. So I can't use any of these. I'm going to do right here, which is sort range, which allows me to have a more full adjustment. Sort range. I want to make sure it knows that there is a header row, because if I don't tell it that, it will sort the word district and campus alphabetically with the rest. And I want to first sort by district from A to Z. But I can add another sort column. And if I choose that, let's see here, can I get, oh, you know what? It's because I didn't select both. So let me select both and go data, sort range. Data has a header row, district A to Z, and now campus. Because I did not grab both columns, it didn't recognize that other bit of data. So first by district, then by campus, both alphabetical A to Z. I could add additionals if I have more. I could do like last names of teachers and so forth. But now I'm going to hit sort. And if I look, Allensworth, Allensworth. Here are all the Cutler-Orosi's, but you'll see C-E-L-E-S-G-L-O-N-P. It did a secondary sort within the school district and alphabetically arranged all the campuses. Then Dinuba, then Porterville, and then Visalia Unified. So that's how you sort. Select the columns that have the data, go to data. I always recommend going to sort range because then you can add more than one range. But what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and grab district, and instead of sort, I'm going to create a filter. You can do a filter on more than one column at once if you want, but I'm just going to choose district. And whenever I add a filter, it adds this little tiny funnel looking thing at the right corner of that header. And if I click it, I get filter parameters. Every entry is checked, ready to go. So I'm pulling from all of the school districts. I'm not leaving any out when I make this filter condition. And I go right here, filter by condition. How about the text contains something? In this instance, I'm going to say Visalia. I want to filter out of all of these entries in the column, give me everything that has Visalia in it. I could type the whole thing, but I'm saying contains. So I'm going to give it a shot. Text contains Visalia. There I go. Filter is different than sort because filter removes the Allensworth and the Porterville and Dinuba and Cutler-Orosi entries. and only shows me what fits my filter. The info is not thrown away. It's just hidden from view right now. But there it is. And now I have a list of all of my school districts. I can click right here and I could change this up. I could go to, instead of that, Cutler. And here are all my Cutler Orosi Joint Unified School District campuses. There are a lot of support staff out there that will have a spreadsheet with all these values, and they'll just run a filter and they'll leave that filter. They'll close it like this, and the next time you need to search for something, they just go back in. It still has the original filter. They just click here and change the filter condition to something else. You can also, if you put in some sort of conditional formatting that made certain entries red or green or yellow, you can actually sort a column that has values by that color. And it will just show you the values that have that highlighted color based upon the condition you put into place. All right, so the last one I'm going to cover here real quick is charts. This is just a fictitious TCOE steps challenge, how many steps in a week, and it has 3 departments, and it has week 1 steps, week 2 steps, and week 3 steps. So the first thing I'm going to do is do a running tally or a running total. And so I'm going to go right here and go equals, and then I'll put in parentheses. Oops, I'll put in sum and in parentheses. And I'm going to grab these 3 values and hit enter. So here's my running total. I'm going to steal, using flash fill, double click, and use that formula on those other 2 cells as well. From here, I am going to take this information right here and create a chart. I want a chart that will give me a pie chart of these 3 departments and their percentage of a pie chart. So I'm going to highlight that info and go insert chart. It will insert a chart for me automatically, and it will recommend a pie chart for this simple data. If I don't want that, I could go through and pick any number of these other charts to showcase the data. Maybe I want this 3D pie chart. That's kind of cool. And from here, I've got my breakup, 33%, 24, and 42. And it opens up a chart customizer too. So if I don't want instructional services to be red, I can change it. I can make it this green. Human resources, I can make it be this lighter color. Business services, I can make it be, say, this color right here. So you can adjust those as you please. If you don't want the word running totals, you can click in here and change that up to be something else. I can add here TCOE department, running totals, and click away. Even though it stole it from here, or running totals from here, I can change it to be something else. So just know that. There's a 3-dot menu where you can use to edit, to delete. You can download this chart as an image and put it into a Word document or something if you wanted to. You can copy it, or you can even move that chart to be on its own sheet or own tab and then refer to it as you go. Maybe you want people to see this but not the original data up above. You can move this to a new sheet and just make that sheet visible to people, not the originating data. So if I choose edit chart, I get that editor. Again, here's where I can change the chart. There are labels, and I can pick different labels on here. I got currently department, and that's what these labels are. They're drawn from department. But if I don't want that, I can grab some other header and use that as the label. I've got switch rows and columns. That won't work. So sometimes it will, depending on the type of chart. You can customize over here. Background color is white. If you don't want that, if you want like a light gray or some other color, you can make that be your background. Chart borders, you can make those be black instead of gray, and so you get this black line around it. Let's see here. It's in 3D right now, and that's what you see there. Pie chart. Maybe you want a donut hole. That puts a little donut hole in there to make it visually a little easy to see the breakdown. Some people like those, some people don't. Slice labels are good for if you wanted to do pivot charts. We're not going to cover pivot charts because remember, this is introduction. Pie slices, here's where you can pick your colors and the distance from the center. So you can actually pick a particular slice and have it be removed so you could focus on it. All you have to do is pick the particular slice, say instructional services, and there is our next slice moved away. So you can do some pretty powerful things with charts in here. Axes, you can change what shows up, the font size, the font colors, and legends. You can determine where the legend will be for the chart, which is down here. If I don't want it on the left, on the bottom, I can put it on the left, and there you go. So again, really powerful tools for charts as well. So let's see here. We covered modifying and creating charts. On tabs, I'll talk about that real quick, and then we'll get into sharing. I mentioned that, let's see here. I mentioned that you have a tab in a spreadsheet when you create it. To add more, just click here. I'll just do that real quick. And you'll see that it's right here. It's by default named Sheet 8. If I click here, I can rename it, call it something else. And I can also, there you go, do things like change the color of the tab. And so there's a little line underneath it that will help me visually designate the color too. All right, so lastly here, how do you share and collaborate with others in your awesome spreadsheet once you get it started? Same as any other Google tool, go to share. But you'll notice this looks a little bit different. They're starting to roll out these sharing windows instead of the ones you might have just gotten used to. And here it says I can add people. And here's where I can put in the email of somebody. And then from here, I can determine what. So on the left is the who, and here is the what. A viewer, a commenter only, or can fully edit my document. And if I choose that, I can notify them, put a customized message, and hit send, and they'll get that share. Otherwise, I can go here, and it says anyone on the internet with this link can view. If I click change, I can determine that instead of anyone, I can restrict it to certain people, or I can say just in my organization, and then I can determine what level of interaction can they have with the spreadsheet. Okay? So that's how you share it. Once that gets shared in Drive, you will see it under Shared with Me right there. All right. So let's see here. Actually, I think I just opened a new one. Didn't have to. All right. So add-ons is here as well, and add-ons work the same as with Slides and Docs and Drive. It's under add-ons. You can go in there and look up third-party add-ons that you can add additionally. That's right here in Sheets. You can just say get add-ons, and there are a ton of different add-ons in here. Lucidchart, Doctopus is one, and Flubaroo are ones that will help you do grade sheets that self-grade. You can add mail merge. So you can actually create a document and do a mail merge for Gmail. It'll take and create an email, insert the fields of information, and then it will auto send an email to the email addresses that are on the spreadsheet. So there's all kinds of interesting things in here. AV Label Maker, you can actually do a mail merge from your spreadsheet into AV Label Makers and print them out on your regular printer. Online rubrics, form makers, and so forth. Lots of really cool ones in here. All you have to do is pick it, and then it'll tell you a little bit about it. Pay attention to the reviews. You can then say install it, and then it'll ask for certain permissions, and then you can install it. And any add-ons you've added will be right here available for you to use on any spreadsheet you open in the future. For printing, under File, you've got Print, And if you choose that, you can pick the whole worksheet, the workbook, or if before you hit print, you selected a range of cells, it will only select, if you select that, it will only print those cells. Here are your paper sizes ultimately for your printer. You can go portrait or landscape, make it fit to the width of the paper. Change up the margins if you need them to fit. There's headers and footers and stuff down here as well. All kinds of interesting stuff that you can use and then print. So I'm going to stop here. We have 15 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions I want to throw into the the chat window? And as a reminder, for those of you that came in a little bit late, this presentation is being recorded, so you will be receiving in your email either tonight or tomorrow a link to a YouTube video that has a recording of this entire session. You can pause at any time, and then you can go back and open up Drive and a sheet and follow along. Jump into YouTube, look up anything you want. There's tons of great tutorials out there. So anyone have any questions? Throw it in chat or no? Okay. You've got my contact information. It's on this first slide. It's also in the email you got for the invitation. If you have any questions about sheets later on, you can feel free to ask me. You can email me and I'll be happy to answer it. I can resend you stuff. I can look something up for you. Otherwise, just remember it's Learn by Project. The YouTube will be available, as far as I know, forever. If after the pandemic is over, they want us to pull some of that stuff down, I don't know. But for now, my intention is to leave that up forever for you. All right, well, I'll go ahead and end it here. If you have any questions later on, you think of one later tonight or something, you can email me and ask me anytime. So you guys have a great afternoon, and hopefully I see some of you again soon in another training.